The Galactic Empire, known for its might and advanced technology, ruled the stars with an iron grip. For centuries, their fleets had sailed across the galaxy, conquering worlds, suppressing rebellions, and maintaining an unchallenged peace. Their technology was far beyond the reach of most other civilizations. There was no species that could stand against them, not for long anyway. The Empire's capital planet, Draknor, was a hub of power and control. The command center, a towering structure filled with screens and advanced technology, was always humming with activity. The High Command's officers were used to monitoring the movements of the stars and the various fleets under their control. But one morning, something unusual appeared on their radar. At first it was a mere blip, no bigger than the countless space debris floating in the galaxy. But this blip wasn't moving like debris. It was moving deliberately as if it had a purpose. General Kale, the commander of the fleet stationed at Draknor, stood before the massive holographic display in the war room. His sharp eyes narrowed as he examined the data. His fingers moved quickly over the controls, zooming in on the blip. "Any identification?" he barked, his voice as cold as steel. The officer manning the console shook his head. "Negative, General. It doesn't match any known vessel signatures. It's human." "Human?" Kale repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Impossible. The humans haven't been a threat in centuries. Their ships are primitive at best. Their civilization is barely out of the Stone Age." He stepped closer, to the display, staring at the data. The ship was moving fast, far faster than the humans' old warships ever could. The Empire had long assumed that humanity, the so-called primitives of the galaxy, had remained in the past. But here it was. A ship, a human warship, heading directly into Empire territory. The thought seemed absurd. Could it be a mistake? A stray ship lost in space? The Empire had seen it all, but this was something else. "We need to investigate," Kale ordered. "Send a scout fleet. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." Moments later, a small fleet of advanced Empire warships left the capital planet's orbit, heading toward the mysterious human vessel. The Empire ships, sleek and deadly, dwarfed the unknown human ship in size. The human vessel was unlike anything the Empire had seen before, but it was old, too old to pose any real threat. As the fleet neared the strange ship, they sent a transmission, hoping to communicate with the crew. A calm voice came through the comms. "This is the human warship Exodus, Captain Holden speaking. We have entered your space in accordance with human protocol." The Empire officers were stunned. The humans had no business here. Their ships were outdated, no match for the mighty Empire. Still, Kale ordered the fleet to hold their fire, unsure of what was going on, but confident that they could deal with the situation with ease. "Captain Holden, you are in violation of Empire space. You will cease all movement and prepare to be boarded," the officer in charge of the fleet announced coldly. There was a brief silence on the comms before Captain Holden's voice came through. Again, calm as ever. "We are merely passing through. No harm intended. We will comply with your request for a boarding party." Kyle's brow furrowed. Something about the exchange unsettled him. There was no fear in the human captain's voice, no hint of hesitation. In fact, there was something almost too composed about the entire situation. The humans were supposed to cower before the might of the Empire, not speak with such certainty. "Prepare to board," Kale ordered. "Let's end this nonsense quickly." But just as the Empire ships began to position themselves for a boarding operation, something shocking occurred. The human warship Exodus shifted position, suddenly accelerating with an incredible burst of speed. It dodged a full assault from the Empire fleet with ease, its movements sharp and precise as if it had anticipated the attack. The Empire ships, surprised by the sudden maneuver, scrambled to adjust their positions, but it was too late. The Exodus fired its weapons, small at first, but the energy blasts tore through the Empire ship's shields with remarkable efficiency. It was as if the human warship knew exactly where to strike. One by one, the Empire ships began to suffer damage. The shields flickered and failed, the weapon systems went offline, and the fleet started to panic. How is this possible? An officer screamed, his voice filled with disbelief. They're weapons. They're cutting through our shields like paper. General Kale stood frozen, his mind racing. The humans had no right to be this advanced. They were supposed to be weak, defenseless, a species that could barely handle space travel. How could they possibly possess weapons that were more powerful than anything the Empire had? Pull back, retreat, Kyle ordered. But the damage was already done. The Empire's fleet was in disarray, their ships retreating under the relentless assault from the Exodus. As the Empire ships limped back toward Draknor, General Kale could hardly believe what he had witnessed. His entire understanding of the human species was shattered in an instant. The humans weren't just survivors of the galaxy. They were evolving, advancing, and somehow they had managed to develop technology far beyond what anyone had thought possible. Back at Draknor, the war room was silent. Officers moved around, trying to piece together the events, but one thing was clear. The humans had just delivered a powerful message. They weren't the weak, primitive species the Empire had always thought they were, and they had only just begun. This first part introduces the setting, the shock of encountering a human warship, and the beginning of the Empire's realization that they've underestimated humanity. It sets up the mystery and tension while laying the groundwork for the bigger challenges ahead. Let me know if you want to continue with the next part. Kaminidan. The Galactic Empire had never tasted fear like this. The loss of their scout fleet shook the entire command structure. General Kale, a seasoned officer who had never lost a single battle, now stood silent in the war room, watching the battle. Footage again and again. The human warship Exodus had danced through their fleet like a ghost. Its weapons had torn through their most advanced shielding. It hadn't taken damage. It hadn't even looked like it was trying. Kale clenched his fists behind his back. This is no ordinary ship, he muttered. This is something else. A new alert flashed across the main screen. The Exodus had stopped. It was hovering near the edge of a gas giant, calmly broadcasting a simple message on all open frequencies. Human warship Exodus, awaiting further contact. Kale frowned. They're not fleeing. Why not? They could have left the system, said his communication officer. But they stayed. Send a long-range diplomatic drone, Kyle ordered. Let's see what this captain really wants. The diplomatic drone approached the Exodus, broadcasting peaceful intentions. Unlike typical Empire drones, this one carried no weapons, only cameras and translators. As it neared the human ship, a secure channel opened. A calm, male voice spoke. Captain Holden of the Exodus, you may send your questions. The Empire's officers listened from the command center as the AI from the drone responded. This is the Galactic Empire. You are in restricted space. State your reason for entry. We're not here to start a war, Captain Holden replied. But we will defend ourselves if attacked again. Kyle leaned in closer. The human's voice was steady. Not proud, not arrogant, just firm, like a man who had already seen too much war. You are far from your known territories, the AI said. Explain the nature of your ship. How does it have such firepower? Holden paused for a moment, then he answered. You think we're still the same humans you encountered centuries ago? We're not. The Exodus is the result of survival. Humanity was nearly wiped out 100 years ago. The old governments failed. The old systems collapsed. But we didn't die. Kyle exchanged a look with his officers. We changed, Holden continued. We built new systems. Harder, stronger, smarter. And then we built this ship, not for conquest but for protection. We've seen what's out there, and we won't be weak again. The room was silent. Kale broke the silence. How many more like that ship? We're not here to threaten you, Holden said, ignoring the question. But if you fire on us again, we will respond with full force. Then the channel went silent. Back on Draknor, the Council of War was called. Generals, admirals, and high-level scientists gathered to discuss what they had just heard. One of the Empire's senior engineers spoke first. The Exodus seems to use energy weapons we don't fully understand. Their shield technology appears to absorb attacks and redirect power back to their systems. How is that possible? Another general asked. We don't know, the engineer admitted. It's decades ahead of us, maybe more. Kyle stood up. They've adapted. While we grew lazy in our power, they grew strong in their struggle. There was silence in the room again. But we are still the Empire, another general said. We cannot let one ship defy us. Kyle nodded. I agree. But let us not be foolish. If we attack, we must be ready. Meanwhile, aboard the Exodus, Captain Holden stood in the command chamber, looking out at the gas giant beyond the glass. His crew was quiet, alert. A young officer spoke. Sir, Empire fleets are regrouping. Scanners show heavy movements in the nearby sectors. They'll try again, Holden said, but next time it won't be a test. The ship's AI spoke next. We intercepted their council meeting. They're preparing for war. Holden nodded slowly. They still don't understand us. He walked toward the central control table, placing a hand on its surface. A holographic image of Earth appeared. Green, blue, alive. We didn't leave Earth to conquer, he said. We left to make sure we had a home to return to. If the Empire wants a war, they'll find out what a human warship is truly capable of. Back in Empire territory, the fleet was being prepared. New capital ships, cruisers, and strike fighters were loaded and fueled. Thousands of soldiers were briefed. Across the Empire, the story of the mysterious human ship spread like fire. Most laughed. A single ship? A human ship? But a few, especially those who had seen the battle recordings, remained quiet, and they were afraid. On the bridge of the Exodus, Holden looked at the tactical display. Red dots marked the incoming fleet. Dozens of ships, thousands of lives. He sighed. Why do they always choose war first? His second officer spoke. Because they don't know who we are yet. Holden turned toward the crew. Prepare the Exodus. No lethal shots unless necessary. But let them see what humans can do. Lights dimmed. The ship's systems powered up. The crew moved calmly, professionally. This wasn't their first battle, but it might be their most important one. As the Empire fleet neared, Kale sat on his flagship. He had a strange feeling in his chest. Doubt. For the first time in his long career, he wasn't sure they would win, but it was too late to turn back now. Engage, he ordered. Across space, energy crackled. Weapons powered up. War had begun, and at the center of it all, a single human ship waited. Alone, but not afraid. The Galactic Empire was used to controlling everything. They had the most advanced fleets, the most powerful weapons, and technology that stretched across hundreds of worlds. For them, the galaxy was theirs to command. No species had ever risen to challenge them for long. Yet this time, something felt different. The Exodus had already shown them that human technology was far more advanced than they had believed. But it wasn't just the ship or its weapons that unnerved the Empire. It was the humans themselves. How could a species that had once been nothing more than scattered tribes on a small, primitive world now pose such a threat? It made no sense. Back. At the Empire's command center on Draknor, General Kale sat in the war room staring at the screen. His eyes were fixed on the image of the Exodus. The human warship was barely a speck on the holographic display, yet it held the attention of the entire Empire. What are we missing? Kale muttered. How did they get this powerful so quickly? The officer next to him, a younger strategist, named Lieutenant Thal, cleared his throat. General, we've intercepted more messages from the Exodus. They've been sending us detailed transmissions about their history, their struggles. Kale looked up, curious. What do they want us to see? Their so-called survival? Thal nodded. Yes, sir. They're not just showing us their technology. They're telling us about their past. Kale raised an eyebrow. Their past? What does that have to do with us? Thal handed over a data pad. On it was a transmission from the human warship, a simple message from Captain Holden. Humanity's story isn't one of glory. It's a story of survival, of learning from our mistakes. We came from nothing, from a planet full of division and violence. And when we were on the brink of extinction, we found a way to adapt. We fought wars, but the biggest battle we fought was against ourselves. We broke, and then we rebuilt. We had no choice but to grow stronger, or we would have died. This warship is proof of that strength, and it's not the only one. Cale scrolled through the transmission. The message wasn't boastful, but it wasn't weak either. It was raw, honest. And it made Cale think. The humans had evolved, not just in their technology, but in their mindset. They had learned to survive, no matter the cost. And that made them more dangerous than anything the Empire had faced before. What did their history look like? Cale asked, still skeptical but intrigued. Thal hesitated. It's harsh. The humans were once divided. Wars, poverty, famine. They almost wiped themselves out. But when they came together, they rebuilt. It wasn't an easy journey, and they've had to fight every step of the way. They developed technologies in secret, learned from their mistakes, and survived when everyone thought they were finished. Cale stared at the screen, feeling a strange sense of unease. He had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. Many had tried to challenge the Empire, but none had lasted. But these humans were different. They didn't just build weapons. They built a way of thinking, a way of life that made them persistent, relentless. I've always believed the galaxy was ours to command, Cale said, his voice quiet. But maybe that's not true anymore. Aboard the Exodus, Captain Holden stood in front of a large, interactive display. The crew worked silently, each member focused on their task. The ship had taken a beating, but it was far from defeated. If anything, the attack had only strengthened their resolve. Status report, Holden ordered. Shields holding steady, the communications officer replied. We've got incoming Empire ships in the outer rim. Looks like they've decided to launch their full assault. Holden nodded, his expression calm. He had known this was coming. It was only a matter of time before the Empire came for them, with everything they had. Prepare the ship, he said. I want everyone ready. But remember, our goal isn't to destroy them, it's to show them what we've become. His second-in-command, Commander Lyra, looked up from her console. Are we sure about this? We can't keep avoiding a direct confrontation forever. We won't avoid it forever, Holden replied. But we'll fight on our terms. We show them our power, but we don't break our code. We fight to survive, not to conquer. Lyra nodded, though she still had doubts. The battle ahead would be unlike any they had fought before. Back on Draknor, General Cale prepared for the final assault. The Empire had mobilized its strongest fleet, and there was no turning back. Kyle stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the fleet assembled in formation. The screen flickered, and an officer reported, General, we've received a message from the Exodus. Kyle's eyes narrowed. Put it through. The transmission from Captain Holden appeared on the screen. His face was calm, unshaken. To the Empire, we have no intention of surrendering. We did not come to you for war, but you've given us no choice. We will fight to protect what we have rebuilt, and we will never back down. This ship and its crew are a symbol of what humanity can achieve when we are pushed to the edge. We will not fall, and we will not fail. Cale stared at the image of Holden for a moment, his mind racing. The human captain wasn't just speaking to the Empire, he was speaking to the galaxy. The message wasn't one of fear nor of defiance, it was a promise, and it struck Cale harder than any weapon ever could. He turned to his officers, his voice steady. Prepare to engage. We end this today. But deep down, he knew something had changed. The Empire had always assumed it was the strongest force in the galaxy, but now, it wasn't so certain. As the Empire's fleet surged forward, the Exodus began to move, its weapons coming online. The ship glowed with the hum of energy as it powered up for the battle ahead. The calm before the storm hung in the air, but Captain Holden was ready. Humanity had already been through the worst, and now they would show the galaxy what it meant to survive. The cold, unfeeling expanse of space stretched infinitely ahead as the Empire's fleet advanced, a wall of warships and strike cruisers that could have crushed any other fleet with ease. The ships were massive, their weapon systems primed, and their soldiers prepared for the battle ahead. General Kale, the leader of the Empire's forces, stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the advancing fleet with a steely gaze. He had seen countless battles, but today was different. Today he was facing something he hadn't anticipated. Human warship capable of challenging the might of the Empire itself. The tactical display in front of him showed the Exodus, a single ship surrounded by nothing but the empty black of space. It was so small compared to the Empire's fleet, yet Kale could not shake the feeling of unease. The Exodus had already demonstrated its power by defeating a small squadron of Empire ships, but that was nothing compared to the full force the Empire was about to bring down on it. This would be a decisive battle. Either the Exodus would be destroyed, or the Empire would have to face a new reality, one in which humans were no longer a species to be underestimated. "General," said one of the officers, "we are in position. The human ship is dead ahead." "Launch the attack," Kale ordered, his voice resolute. The fleet surged forward, massive engines roaring to life as the ships broke through space at lightning speeds. The Exodus didn't move. It just sat there waiting as if daring the Empire to make the first move. The silence was eerie. The Empire's ships unleashed a barrage of weapons, massive energy blasts, hurtling toward the lone human warship. To Kale's surprise, the Exodus didn't try to dodge. Instead, it absorbed the blasts. The ship's shields shimmered briefly as the attacks collided with them, but they held strong. The energy from the blasts seemed to dissipate into the ship itself, powering it up further. A low hum reverberated through the Empire fleet as they watched in disbelief. It was as if the Exodus was feeding on their attacks, growing stronger with every shot. "Impossible," Kyle muttered under his breath. The Exodus fired back. At first, the shots were small, almost too small to be noticed. But as they hit their targets, the Empire ships began to shudder. One cruiser lost its shields entirely, another was hit directly in its engines, and the entire vessel exploded in a ball of flame. The Exodus wasn't just fighting back, it was counterattacking with brutal precision. Kyle gripped the edge of his command chair, his mind racing. He had expected this battle to be over quickly, but now the Exodus was showing them that it was. More than just a threat, it was an equal, maybe even more. "Deploy the full artillery," Kale commanded. No more playing around. Across the fleet, enormous turrets and energy cannons locked onto the Exodus, their weapons charging up with deadly force. The Empire's full strength was now focused on that one small ship. The Exodus responded with more laser fire, weaving in and out of the Empire's attacks as though it could anticipate every move they made. Holden, standing on the bridge of the Exodus, watched as the Empire unleashed its full firepower. His crew was calm, their movements practiced. They had prepared for this moment for years. The Exodus wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of everything humanity had fought for. Survival, resilience, strength. "Focus fire on their lead ship," Holden ordered. "Give them a taste of what we can do." The Exodus fired, its weapons cutting through space with devastating accuracy. Energy bolts struck the lead Empire ship directly, shattering its shields and ripping through its hull. The ship was disabled. In seconds, its engines sputtering out of control as it spiraled into the void. Another Empire ship fired back, but the Exodus had already moved. It dodged, barely visible against the backdrop of the stars. It was as if the ship was dancing with death, anticipating every shot and avoiding it with unnatural grace. The Empire's fleet couldn't keep up. The Exodus was too fast, too precise. "This is impossible," Kale muttered, watching in horror as his fleet fell apart piece by piece. "How can they move like that?" On the bridge of the Exodus, Holden's eyes were locked on the battle ahead. His face was calm, but inside he felt the tension. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a statement. Humans weren't the weak species the Empire had believed them to be. They had grown. They had learned. And now they were teaching the Empire a lesson in strength. "Keep the pressure up," Holden said. "They have no idea what they're dealing with." The battle raged on, and one by one Empire ships began to fall. The Exodus danced through the chaos, its weapons never faltering. The Empire's superior numbers meant nothing against the precision of the human warship. Kyle watched as his fleet began to retreat, unable to make a dent in the relentless assault from the Exodus. "Pull back," Kyle finally ordered, his voice filled with frustration. "We can't win this, not like this." The remaining Empire ships began to disengage, their captains unwilling to face complete annihilation. The Exodus didn't chase them down. It simply floated in space, waiting, watching, as the Empire fled. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Aboard the Exodus, the crew celebrated their victory, but there was no joy in Holden's eyes. He knew that the Empire wouldn't stop. They would regroup. They would attack again. And the next time it wouldn't be just one ship. "The battle is over for now," Holden said, turning to his crew. "But this isn't the end. We've just shown them what we're capable of, but we'll need more ships, more weapons if we're going to survive what comes next." Lyra, his second-in-command, stepped forward. "The Empire will never let this go, Captain. We've made a statement today, but they'll come back with everything they have." Holden nodded. "Let them. We'll be ready." Back on Draknor, General Kale paced back and forth, his mind still racing. The humans had won. They had defeated the Empire's most powerful fleet with just one ship. It didn't make sense. How had they done it? What did it mean? "General," said one of his officers, "we've sent out recon ships. They're reporting that the human ship is regrouping. It seems they're planning something." Kale turned sharply, his eyes cold. "Then we need to be ready. Send word to the fleet. The next time we fight, we'll do it right." The Empire wasn't going to let this go, and neither were the humans. The war was just beginning. The Exodus floated in space, its systems humming as the crew continued their recovery after the battle. The Empire's attack had been fierce, but humanity had proven that they could fight back and win. However, Captain Holden knew that victory in one battle didn't guarantee survival in the war. The Empire would regroup, rethink its strategy, and come back even stronger. Holden paced the bridge, his mind running through the possibilities. They had just destroyed a fleet of Empire warships, but the Empire wasn't going to sit back and accept defeat. This was just the beginning, and humanity had to be ready. He had no illusions about the road ahead. "Captain, we've received a message from the Empire." Lyra, his second-in-command, called out from her station. Holden stopped and looked toward her. "What now?" he asked, his tone weary but firm. "It's a direct transmission. They're requesting a meeting," she said, confusion in her voice. "They want to speak to you." A quiet murmur of surprise rippled through the bridge crew. Holden raised an eyebrow. The Empire had always been the aggressor, never interested in negotiation. But now, after losing so much, they were willing to talk. "Put it through," he said, his voice steady. The screen flickered and the face of General Kale appeared. His stern expression softened only slightly, revealing a flicker of doubt beneath his hard exterior. "Captain Holden," Kale began, his voice carrying the weight of a commander who had just experienced the unthinkable. "I never thought I would be the one saying this, but it seems we need to reconsider our approach. You've shown us that humanity is not what we believed. You've proven your strength today. And now, I offer a truce." Holden stood silent for a moment. He had expected many things from the Empire, but this was unexpected. A truce? After everything that had happened? The man who once commanded an entire galaxy was now offering peace? It didn't sit well with him, but Holden knew this could be a crucial moment. "A truce?" Holden repeated, his tone skeptical. "You want peace after attacking us? After sending fleets to destroy us?" Kale looked grim. "I do not expect you to forgive the Empire for what has been done, but we must acknowledge the truth. You are a threat, no longer a primitive species to be ignored. You have a power we underestimated, and now the balance of the galaxy has shifted. We are willing to negotiate, to find a way forward without further bloodshed. Holden's mind raced. This could be a trap, a ruse to get them to lower their guard, but it could also be the opportunity they needed to avoid a devastating war. Humanity had survived by making difficult choices, and this was one of them. "We'll consider your offer," Holden said slowly, "but do not mistake this for weakness. If you continue to push us, we will fight. We will fight until there is no one left to fight." The silence in the room was palpable. Kale's expression hardened again. "I understand," he said. "We'll give you time, but know this, Captain. The Empire does not back down easily." The screen cut off and the bridge fell into quiet tension. Lyra turned to Holden. "Do you trust them?" "I trust that the Empire is dangerous," Holden said, his voice low. "But I don't trust their offer, not yet." Back aboard the Empire's flagship, General Kale stared at the blank screen, his fingers tapping lightly against the console. A part of him regretted the offer, but he knew there was no turning back. The Exodus had made a statement that no one could ignore. Humanity wasn't the weak, fractured species they had once thought them to be. They had risen, evolved, and now they were a force to be reckoned with. And that realization had shaken Kale to his core. He turned to his officers, his eyes cold, but filled with an undeniable respect. "We underestimated them," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "and we're paying the price for it." "We should prepare for another assault," one of his officers suggested, eager to reassert their dominance. Kale shook his head. "No, we can't afford another failure. Not like that. We need to rethink our strategy. We need to learn from them." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you mean, General?" Kyle turned to face them. "Humans adapt. They learn. If we attack again, they will be ready. We need to understand their methods, their technology, their way of thinking. They've already shown us that they can beat us in battle. The next time we face them, we need to be smarter. We can't rely on brute force anymore." Meanwhile, on the Exodus, Holden stared out at the stars, deep in thought. He knew that the truce wasn't going to last. The Empire was still a powerful force, and no one who held power like that would simply walk away from a challenge. The Empire would regroup. It would strike again. But the humans had survived, and they were far stronger than the Empire realized. Holden turned to his crew. "We've bought ourselves time, but the Empire isn't done yet. We need to prepare. We need more ships, more weapons, and we need to understand how the Empire thinks." Lyra nodded. "You're right, we can't just defend ourselves. We have to be ready to strike back when the time comes." One of the engineers spoke up from the back. "We've been working on enhancing our shields and energy weapons. If the Empire comes at us again, we'll be ready." Holden gave a small nod of approval. "Good. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the future of humanity." The next few days were spent in tense silence as both sides regrouped. The Exodus continued to repair itself, and the human crew worked tirelessly to upgrade their technology. Meanwhile, the Empire spent its time analyzing the data from the battle, trying to understand how the Exodus had managed to defeat such overwhelming force. They knew one thing for sure. The humans were not what they appeared to be, and that truth could either save them or destroy them. For Holden, the decision was clear. The Empire was too dangerous to leave unchecked, no matter how much they wanted peace. The humans would never let their guard down, and if the Empire came again, they would be ready. Humanity had faced extinction. Now, they would face the future, no matter what it took. The stars of the galaxy stretched in front of the Exodus as it silently floated through space. It was a strange kind of peace that had settled over humanity's warship. After the devastating battle with the Empire, the crew had been granted a brief respite. For a few days, they had been able to rest, repair, and prepare for whatever would come next. But that peace was fragile. Holden knew it would not last long. In the war room aboard the Exodus, the crew was gathered around a holographic display. The battle had shown them what the Empire was capable of, But it had also shown them something else. Humanity had power. They had the will to fight, and they had the intelligence to outsmart even the greatest of their enemies. "Captain," Lyra began, breaking the silence, "we've had time to upgrade the ship, but the Empire will be better prepared next time. We can't assume they'll make the same mistakes again." Holden nodded. "I know. But that doesn't mean we can't use what we've learned. The Empire doesn't understand us, but we understand them. We've seen their tactics, and we've seen their weaknesses." He turned to the tactical officer who was watching the Empire's movements on the screen. "What's their next move?" The officer zoomed in on the data. "They've formed a new fleet, Captain. A larger one this time. It's moving into our sector." Holden's eyes narrowed. "I knew they wouldn't give up that easily." Lyra looked at him. "What's our plan, Captain?" "We're not going to wait for them to come to us," Holden said. "We'll strike first. We'll hit them where they're weakest and force them to rethink this war." The room fell silent as the crew absorbed Holden's words. It was a bold move. The Empire was powerful, and any battle with them could mean disaster. But humanity had no choice. They couldn't let the Empire continue to bully their way across the galaxy. They had to show the Empire that the Exodus wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of humanity's strength. Back on Draknor, General Kale stood before a massive map of the galaxy, his eyes scanning the projected movements of the Empire's fleet. He knew the Exodus was dangerous. He had seen it firsthand. But it wasn't just the ship that worried him. It was what it represented. The human race had been underestimated for far too long, and now they were fighting back. The question was, could the Empire truly defeat them? He turned to his officers. "We're not dealing with a primitive species anymore. The humans have technology that we don't fully understand, and they're willing to use it. But they are also fighting with something we haven't seen before. A will to survive, a refusal to be broken. And that's what makes them so dangerous." One of the officers spoke up. "General, should we send a full attack force?" Kale's face tightened. "Not yet. We need to be smarter than that. We've already underestimated them once. This time we wait for them to make a mistake, and when they do, we'll strike." The Exodus moved silently through the dark void of space, its crew ready for whatever was coming. The time had come for humanity to make its mark on the galaxy, to prove once and for all that they were no longer the weak species they had once been. "Captain, the Empire fleet has entered our sector," the tactical officer reported. Holden stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. The Empire's fleet was massive. They had pulled out all the stops this time. But Holden wasn't afraid. He had seen the Empire's strength and their weaknesses. "Prepare the ship," Holden said, his voice calm. "We'll take the fight to them." The Exodus's weapons powered up as it moved into position. The crew worked in perfect harmony, each person knowing exactly what needed to be done. The human warship wasn't just a collection of metal and wires. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience, and it would not be easily destroyed. The Empire fleet was closing in fast. Their weapon systems were primed, their ships prepared for battle. The Exodus was outnumbered, but it didn't matter. It had already proven that it could take on the Empire and win. Holden turned to his crew. "Let's show them what we're made of." As the Exodus approached the Empire's fleet, the tension in the air was thick. The massive warships of the Empire loomed ahead, their weapons glowing with deadly intent. But the Exodus was ready. It had already absorbed countless blows and had come out stronger every time. Now it was time to fight. The first shots were fired, and the battle began. The Exodus dodged and weaved through the Empire's attacks, its shields glowing as they absorbed the energy from each hit. But it didn't stop there. The Exodus struck back with precision, its weapons firing with deadly accuracy. Energy blasts hit the Empire ships, tearing through their shields and ripping apart their hulls. For every Empire ship that fell, the Exodus moved forward, relentless. Its crew didn't flinch. They knew what was at stake. The Empire was powerful, but the Exodus was more than just a ship. It was a declaration of humanity's strength. The battle raged on, but the Empire's forces were beginning to crumble. The Exodus's weapons never slowed, its tactics never faltered. It was as though the ship had anticipated every move the Empire made, every counterattack, every shift in strategy. General Kale watched from his flagship as his fleet began to fall apart. The human warship was tearing through his forces, with precision and power just like before. But this time there was no retreat. The Empire's fleet was broken and the Exodus had proven itself again. "Pull back," Kale shouted, but it was too late. The Exodus had already dealt a devastating blow. His fleet was in chaos, and there was no recovery. As the last of the Empire's ships retreated into the depths of space, Holden stood on the bridge of the Exodus, staring at the damaged fleet as it fled. This time the humans had won, not just the battle but the war. The Empire had been humbled and humanity had made its place in the galaxy. "We did it," Lyra said, her voice filled with awe. Holden's expression was grim. "It's not over. The Empire won't give up that easily." But for the first time since the war began, there was hope. Humanity had shown that they could survive, they could thrive, and the galaxy would never forget it.